There's a kind of question that doesn't seek truth. It seeks ownership, a quiet kind of dominance disguised as curiosity. And if you've ever felt that cold ripple in your stomach, that subtle sense that something is wrong, even though the words sound harmless, then you've already encountered one of the oldest weapons of manipulation. Because liars don't just lie with sentences. They lie with structures, with tone, with timing, with questions engineered not to reveal reality, but to distort it. Stoic philosophers, men who walked into emperors' courts and returned with their sanity intact, understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. They recognized that a manipulator's greatest weapon is never the lie itself, but the way they bend your mind to accept it. And today, we expose the 5 questions liars use to twist perception, shred confidence, and rewrite your reality without you even noticing. Let's begin. Why are you being so sensitive? The gaslighter's opening strike. This question is not a question. It's a verdict delivered with a smile. It's a psychological grenade wrapped in velvet, thrown precisely at the moment you start noticing something is wrong. What the liar really means is simple. I need you to doubt your intuition so I can continue crossing your boundaries. The Stoic Seneca once warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Liars weaponize exactly that, your imagination. They want you to replay your own reactions in your head. Was I overreacting? Am I being dramatic? Maybe I misunderstood. Because the more you question your reality, the easier it becomes for them to replace it with theirs. But the Stoics saw sensitivity differently. To them, sensitivity wasn't fragility. It was awareness, a finely tuned instrument capable of detecting movements others fail to see. A liar's greatest fear is not a loud person. It's the person who quietly notices everything. So the next time someone fires this line at you, "Why are you being so sensitive?" you pause, you breathe, and with calm precision you answer, "I'm not being sensitive, I'm being observant." Does that make you uncomfortable? Watch how fast the mask fractures. Because manipulators expect confusion, not clarity. They expect you to fold inward, not stand upright. They fear the person who sees.
You trust me, right? From the seduction of blind faith. It sounds harmless. It even sounds affectionate. But beneath it lies a trap built with surgical intention. Because anyone who has integrity does not need to ask for trust. They simply behave in ways that make trust natural. A liar, on the other hand, cannot rely on honesty, so they demand loyalty instead. This question is a psychological chokehold. What they're really saying is, ignore the evidence, ignore your instincts, trust my words over your own mind. Epictetus, a man who lived through slavery and yet saw more truth than emperors, warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Liars use "you trust me," right, to shut down your curiosity, to make caution feel like betrayal, because the more questions you ask, the more the scaffolding of their deception collapses. But the Stoic strategy here is simple: apatheia, emotional detachment. You don't swallow the bait. You don't rush to answer out of guilt. You don't reassure them. Instead, you pause, and calmly redirect the question back into their hands. Trust is earned through consistency. Are you asking me to ignore my own judgment? A truth teller will nod. A liar will panic. Watch which one you're dealing with.
Are you accusing me of something? The deflection trap. Now we enter deeper waters, the territory where manipulators shift the battlefield entirely. You ask a simple question. You express a concern. You point out a contradiction. And suddenly, you become the problem. This question is designed to flip the script with surgical speed. In an instant, the conversation rotates 180 degrees. You're no longer trying to understand something. You're defending your character. The Stoics understood this tactic too. They knew that deflection is a sign of a restless, guilty mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "To be angry at the truth is to show you are not aligned with it." When someone hits you with, "Are you accusing me of something?" it is not a request for clarity. It is an attack meant to knock you off balance. Most people respond by apologizing, or explaining, or reassuring. And that's exactly what the liar wants, for you to retreat while they fortify their lie. But a Stoic does not play that game. A Stoic meets manipulation with stillness. When confronted with this trap, you do not answer yes, you do not answer no. You pause, hold eye contact, let the silence do the work. Then you respond calmly. Should I be? It's a question that slices through fog like a blade. The guilty choke on it. The innocent welcome it. Because truth has nothing to fear from examination. But lies? Lies suffocate under scrutiny. And this is only the beginning. The next questions liars use are even darker because they attempt to rewrite identity, blur certainty, and erase accountability itself. What comes next exposes the final moves of manipulation, the questions that reveal someone who has no intention of being honest, only of being obeyed. And once you see these patterns, you will never unsee them.
We've already uncovered the first layers of manipulation, the questions meant to shame you, guilt you, and push you off balance. But liars don't stop at confusion. Their goal is deeper, darker, to rewrite your perception until you no longer trust your own mind. And to achieve that, they use questions engineered to corner you psychologically. Questions that seem innocent at first glance, until you notice they only appear when someone is trying to hide something. Now we dive into the next two questions, the ones that don't just distort truth, but attempt to erase it.
Would I ever lie to you? Manipulation wrapped in innocence. This question is the velvet glove covering the dagger. It looks soft. It sounds harmless. It even feels comforting when you hear it from someone you care about. But beneath that gentle tone lies a psychological maneuver designed to make you protect their integrity instead of guarding your truth. Because think about it rationally. Why would anyone need to ask this question unless the possibility of lying is already on the table? A Stoic would immediately catch the misdirection. Marcus Aurelius warned, "Do not waste your life in imagining the intentions of others." This is exactly what the liar wants, to pull you away from facts and push you into speculation. Would I ever lie to you? Invites you to imagine them as trustworthy, as morally incapable of deception, as someone who stands above dishonesty. It is a performance, a costume, a mask held tightly to the face. But Stoic philosophy teaches us a different approach.
Never trust imagination over observation. So instead of answering the question, you redirect it calmly and cleanly. That's not the question. The question is, would I notice if you did? Those words crack through illusion, because liars operate in shadows, and you just lit the room. A truthful person will meet your gaze. A liar will flinch, frown, laugh nervously, or immediately change the subject. They're not asking for reassurance. They're asking for surrender. And a Stoic does not surrender truth. Not for comfort, not for emotional peace, not for someone else's convenience.
Can't we just move on from this? The final move. The escape hatch. The last card in the manipulator's deck. When all other tactics fail, when you don't take the bait, when you don't crumble under guilt, when you don't fall for emotional blackmail, they will play the exhaustion card. Can't we just move on? But this question isn't an attempt to resolve conflict. It's an attempt to bury it, to discourage further investigation, to turn your need for understanding into a burden. The Stoics understood this tactic well. Epictetus taught, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Liars use this tactic to push you away from the obstacle because they know the truth is hiding directly behind it. They want you fatigued. They want you to give up, not because you gained clarity, but because they drained your energy. And here's the secret they hope you never learn. Truth does not fear being examined. Only lies do. So when someone begs you to move on before answers appear, before explanations are given, before inconsistencies are addressed, what they are really saying is, stop before you connect the dots. A Stoic meets this tactic with stillness, not surrender. The response is simple, steady, and immovable. I'll move on when I understand what happened, not before. This line is powerful because it's not emotional, it's not aggressive, it's not dramatic, it's factual. Liars cannot stand facts. They can argue with emotion, they can weaponize guilt, they can distort perception, but they cannot fight clarity. Once you refuse to be rushed, the balance of power shifts completely. A person grounded in truth becomes untouchable. A liar, facing someone who won't be manipulated, becomes exposed. Because what they fear more than confrontation is accountability. The one thing their questions were meant to avoid from the start. The mask starts to slip. After these 5 questions, something revealing always happens. The liar becomes irritated, then agitated, then defensive, then strangely emotional. Because you have disrupted their script, and manipulators rely on one thing above all, your predictability. But when you answer with Stoic clarity, calm, grounded, unshakable, you remove the fuel that feeds their power. And this is when you begin to see what the Stoics saw. That deception is not just a social behavior, it is a psychological pattern, a predictable set of moves used by people who fear the consequences of truth. These questions are their tools, their armor, their weapons.
And once you recognize them, you become immune. But the darkest part is still ahead. The final warning Stoic philosophy gives us about liars, that manipulation isn't only built from questions, it's built from emotion. From your guilt, from your insecurity, from your fear of being too much. In the final part, we uncover the last layer, the emotional traps hidden beneath the questions, and how Stoics became the kind of people who could sit in front of a liar and see the truth with terrifying clarity.
We've dissected the questions. We've exposed the hidden traps. But to truly understand the psychology of liars, we must go deeper, into the emotional battlefield beneath the words. Because liars don't survive on logic. They survive on your hesitation, your guilt, your fear of being too demanding, your desire to keep the peace. The questions they ask are only the surface. The real manipulation lies underneath. In the emotional reactions those questions force you to feel. And here is where the Stoics become invaluable. Not because they rejected emotion, but because they refused to be ruled by it. The emotional web liars spin. A skilled manipulator can make you feel wrong when you are right. They can make you apologize even when you're the one being deceived. They can make you question your sanity just to protect their illusion. And they achieve this through subtle emotional strategies. 1. They weaponize guilt. You start thinking, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I should let this go. This is exactly what they want. 2. They paint themselves as the victim. Suddenly, they're the ones hurt. They're the ones misunderstood. You're the cold, heartless interrogator. Stoics saw this tactic thousands of years ago. Epictetus warned, "When another blames you, examine whether what he says is true. If it is, correct it. If it is not, do not be troubled." Liars depend on you being troubled. Stoics depend on you being anchored. 3. They confuse kindness with weakness. Because you care, they assume you will fold. Because you think deeply, they assume you will hesitate. Because you want peace, they assume you fear conflict. But here is the Stoic truth. Peace built on lies is not peace. It is captivity. Once you understand this, you become impossible to manipulate. How Stoics broke the manipulation cycle? Stoicism doesn't tell you to confront liars with violence. It doesn't tell you to shout, expose, or punish. It teaches you something far more powerful. See clearly, respond slowly, remain unshaken. The Stoic way is not about reacting. It's about revealing. And that's why Stoics were so terrifying to manipulators. Because you cannot manipulate a person who does not fear silence, does not rush to defend themselves, does not depend on approval, does not collapse under guilt, does not need to be right, and above all, does not abandon truth to keep someone comfortable. These qualities made Stoics immune to deception. A liar's greatest fear is not exposure. It is exposure to someone who cannot be controlled. The fire drill of truth. At the end of the original teaching, we were given a tool, a mental drill when manipulation appears. Here is the expanded Stoic version,
the one the great masters would run silently whenever they sensed something was off. Is this person seeking truth or power? Are they asking because they want clarity or control? If I remain silent, who becomes uncomfortable? If I answer honestly, who becomes defensive? Would I advise a friend to tolerate this behavior? Does this question make me doubt myself more than it reveals truth? What changes if I refuse to take this personally? What remains if I remove emotion from the equation? These questions do what liars fear most. They separate emotion from observation, story from reality, their manipulation from your mind. With this drill, you're no longer fighting their tactics. You're watching them collapse under their own weight. The awakening, becoming unmanipulatable. There is a moment, every Stoic felt it, every awakened person recognizes it, when your perspective shifts. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop justifying your intuition. You stop apologizing for seeing what others pretend not to see. You become clear, calm, focused. And liars sense it instantly. Because now you are no longer the easy target. You are the one thing they cannot handle. A person who sees. A person who listens beneath the words. A person who doesn't react to emotional bait. A person who asks questions back. A person who remains still while others panic. This doesn't make you cruel. It makes you sovereign. Stoics understood that clarity is not only a virtue, it is protection. A man who sees clearly cannot be deceived easily. A man who remains calm cannot be controlled easily. A man who trusts his instincts becomes dangerous in all the right ways. The final transformation. Here is the final Stoic truth about liars. They don't fear being caught. They fear being seen. Because once you see them clearly, their questions, their tactics, their distortions, their emotional games, they lose the power they thought they had over you. No argument needed, no confrontation required, no dramatic exit necessary. You simply stop playing. And in that quiet, powerful moment, you become exactly what the Stoics aimed to be. Untouchable, unshakable, unmanipulated. Someone who protects their peace without surrendering truth. Someone who refuses to trade clarity for comfort. Someone who walks through a world full of shadows with eyes completely open. A liar thrives in darkness. A Stoic brings light. And light always wins.